Our lesson today comes from Luke chapter 6, verses 17 through 26. And this comes from a section of scriptures that is sometimes called the Sermon on the Plain. Now, we're probably much more familiar with the Sermon on the Mount that we find in Matthew chapters 5, 6, and 7 than we are with this passage in Luke. But here in Luke's account, we see a series of teachings by Jesus that are in some ways similar to those found in the Sermon on the Mount. It's possible that Luke recorded a shortened version of what we find in Matthew, but it's much more likely that Jesus taught similar material on two different occasions to two different groups of people. Luke points out that people had come a long way to see and to hear Jesus. He healed many that were sick, and he cured others who were possessed by demons or by evil spirits. But after that, Jesus began to teach, and it's unlikely that anyone expected the things that he taught on that day. Jesus began with a series of blessings, similar to what we see in the Beatitudes in the opening verses of the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5. And just like the similar statements in Matthew, Jesus' statements here were seemingly impossible or even contradictory. He took the conventional wisdom of his day and also of our day, and he turned it upside down. When we realize that the word translated most often as blessed could also be translated as happy, we begin to see just how radically revolutionary the teachings of Jesus really were. These blessings were directed to the poor, to those in grief and sorrow, and to those who are persecuted. These are not the rich and famous, the elite of society. These are the people at the bottom, the downtrodden and overlooked. And how could Jesus say that they would be blessed? Well, we must understand these statements in terms of God's ultimate plan. The blessings here are not necessarily to be expected immediately. Today, there are still people who are poor, who are sad, who are hungry, who are being persecuted. But if they are serving God, then their final reward will be one that is great. Well, contrasted with them that are rich and those who oppose God, woe to you is the opposite of blessed are you. The poor, humble, weak will be blessed by God not because of their circumstances, but merely because they are God's people. In the same way, the rich are not bad because of their wealth, but because they failed to use their wealth for God rather than for themselves. As Jesus said elsewhere, they had laid up treasures for themselves rather than for God. They had laid up treasures on this earth that one of these days is going to be destroyed. We're not going to be able to take it with us. And what they failed to do was to lay up those spiritual treasures, those good things that are going to be there to speak well for us on the day of judgment. They did not lay up these spiritual treasures. But how was it that Jesus was able to say these things? Well, he could do so only because he was looking beyond this life and into the next. The world tells us to just go ahead, get all you can. Do to others before they do it to you. But Jesus looks at things entirely differently, and those who would follow Jesus must abandon the world's values and take on the value system that Jesus taught. Now, this may not lead to material blessings and may possibly even lead to suffering and persecution. But in the end, following Jesus will lead to eternal blessings in heaven. Friends, we want to thank you for joining us for our program today. We pray that you will consider these things that we have discussed and that the Lord will bless you with a wonderful day.